Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening, everyone. We're back for another week of What Women Want Talk Radio. Thank you for joining us. Our show tonight is Failure is the New Win. Fail early, fail often, fail forward. That's what Will Smith said on a Facebook Live post. Although we did pick the topic before we saw his post, but it's nice to know that people are out there talking about it. And we've reached talking about amazing things, 1 million downloads. So we're talking, since we hit the airwaves between latalkradio.com's archives, iTunes, Google Play, and now we're on YouTube. You can find us everywhere. So we're actively seeking sponsors for our show now, because if we are everywhere, then your company or service will be also. So email us for a complete deck at whatwomenwantshow@gmail.com. And someone from our team will get right back to you. I'm here with Kristen West, my co-host, and no matter what you are or where you're doing, driving, drinking, hopefully not both at the same time, we know you will enjoy our show with conversation that feeds your mind, energizes your spirit, and even makes you laugh once in a while. So kick back and relax and listen. We're going to bring on author and comedienne Amy Lyle. She wrote a best-selling book called The Book of Failures. So we're finding that she's the perfect guest for tonight's show. And we're sorry to say that Siri Lindley, our other guest, is sick with the dreaded flu tonight. So we're sending her healing vibes and a speedy recovery. Siri, I had the flu this past week, and it was not fun at all. Okay, so I had no idea that failure was such a popular topic. Kristen, did you know that there's a museum of failure right in Los Angeles?
It is true. There is one. It's in Hollywood, and I'm dying to go in there. I've driven past it a few times, and it's very popular as well.
Well, it was so popular that they're extending it another 2 weeks. So get in there before, I think, February 18th or 20th or something like that. They called it Fail to Close on Time. So this is really, they're a little humorous too. But people are curious about this subject. This museum was founded in Sweden, and then they got to LA somehow, and they have over 100 products and services that have failed that you may not even realize. The Ford Edsel, which was the dream car of the 60s, I think it came out in 1958, and it's just when you honk the horn, it went into reverse. Talk about the up and up people, Kristen. Oh my gosh, can you imagine honking a horn and it going into reverse? And you know, it's I have to read this short little blurb here. The Museum of Failure will treat its visitors to a shrine of history's epic fails by some of the world's best-known companies. First displayed in Sweden, the collection of 100-plus failures was originally conceived by psychologist and innovation researcher Dr. Samuel West as a part of his research on corporate success and innovation. Okay, the highlights include the hula chair. You can... If you could imagine that one, a frozen beef lasagna by Colgate. Ugh.
Oh my God.
I know. Apple Newton, I guess as opposed to Fig Newton, and even President Donald Trump's version of Monopoly from 1989 made the cut in this museum. So I just happen to love that, and that they're inspiring so many people there.
Are you telling me that President Trump's version of Monopoly was not a bigly success?
Do you remember his little face on that board?
I think I remember seeing this. I'm shocked. Now that we've said it and it's gone out in the radio waves, I'm sure eventually they're going to try and resuscitate it.
I can imagine that. I couldn't imagine him as president, but I can definitely imagine that one.
Well. I mean, I would have to say I've never heard of the Ford that went backwards. The Ford Edsel.
Yeah, they even had a TV show about it, about a car, and then you honk the horn and it goes into reverse mistakenly.
Wow, and
I don't know if they found that out before they put the show out.
And I'm thinking, well, what would that be in my time, in contemporaneous time? And I can tell you, like the little hoverboards that blow up when you ride on them. It's sad and scary.
Well, that's in the museum.
It is?
What do they call the segways?
Yeah, the little. I don't think they're segways, but there's some sort of hoverboards.
Oh, the hoverboard.
Yeah,
that's
and
right.
they blow up, right? After a while, they overheat, and I mean, people have gotten hurt by this, and we're not laughing at people getting hurt, but just this idea of that board. But I think it's an interesting concept for a museum, because so often we privilege success, and we only talk about great people like we have on our show, and we talk about their successes, but it's very important to talk about their failures, because sometimes you have to attempt something 100 times before you get it right.
100. I can't imagine. I've had so many failures in my life that I just have to look back and laugh. And I actually admire someone like Amy, who wrote an entire book on that, because I'm not sure if I could make fun of myself repeatedly like that over and over again. Could you? Maybe you could. You're funny.
Well, I think, there's this interesting thing in comedy where, in particular, there's this author, acting coach in town. His name is Scott Sedita. And he says that one of the principal characters in any sitcom that you watch, whether it's Everybody Loves Raymond or if it's Modern Family or any of those, one of the principal characters is the lovable loser. This is a person who fails at whatever they touch. So there's definitely in comedy an element of being, a loser and having a misadventure. But, Judy, you have a wonderful wit and sense of humor. And your background is just studded with successes of all kinds. I couldn't imagine you being a lovable loser.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? When I read my background on the show, I don't go over any of my failures, but there are a lot of them. And I think when we tend to talk about ourselves, we do highlight the good parts, of course. That's why I admire Amy so much. But my background comes from the fashion and publishing worlds. I was a high fashion model, which I failed at for the first few years, by the way. I was with Ford New York. Oh, funny. This is a funny story in here. Mm-hmm. I was with Ford models in New York, but I had to approach them, you're not going to believe this, or maybe you will, 5 times before they would represent me.
What?
I kept going back and they kept saying no, and I kept going back and they kept saying no 5 times.
Well,
so talk about failures. But I didn't let it get me down. I learned from it. I said, well, what do you need to represent me? What can I do? What should I, how should I move forward? And I think kind of that's what this show is about. Anyway, after that, I went to the behind the camera as a magazine editor. And then I went back to in front of the camera as a TV host for Better TV, City Buzz, and a few other shows. And I'm now a regular contributor on NBC and Fox. And I founded the company What Women Want Networking 7 years ago. We have several regional chapters spanning from coast to coast. And we're coming up with our second national conference in October 19th through 21st. We just confirmed the date. So exciting. And I'm also a St. Martin's Press author and the mom of 13-year-old twin girls. Kristen, what's going up in Hollywood? You have so many things going on. You have Up Live and movies and TV, red carpets, all kinds of stuff. Tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing with this Up Live thing.
Well, I fail early and often.
Hey, you know what? You're rocking the airwaves with that thing. You have like 60% of their audience or something?
Yeah. So Up Live is a live streaming app. Kind of like Live Me and sort of like Facebook Live. And I do a talk show on there, a news commentary, edutainment show called Headlines and Hot Topics. So what I do is I pick 7 headlines, one of which the audience can vote on whether or not they want covered. And I pick 7 headlines. I basically find the news that people miss and report on it and also give some commentary. And we also have other things. We learn words. A lot of people go on that app. Actually, we have audience all over the world, actually. Morocco, Vietnam. And people actually go on that app and just to listen to Americans speak English. So I teach vocabulary words. And also,
well, you know what? I got a comment on Facebook the other day that we have a listener from Indonesia, so that was kind of exciting.
Isn't that exciting? It's amazing when we are able to touch the world. That's what the internet gives us. So I've been doing live streaming now, and right now I'm live streaming Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 4 p.m. My schedule's going to change in February. I'll put it up on my Facebook. And I'm also, Hell's Kitty is getting its movie premiere February 22nd. So it's coming out.
Exciting.
Yes. And then The Lich is in post-production, and The Spirit Room is on the festival circuit, already won an award. I'm really proud of that film.
Congratulations. Now, are you acting in this? Are you producing it, or what are you doing in it?
In the Spirit Room, I'm just acting. Just playing a ghost. Just ghosting around, the usual stuff.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
So yeah, I'm up to that, and yeah, I mean things are great. The new year came in with a lot of good, happy vibes for me, and of course I'm always happy to be on here with you because we have such great conversations. We
really do. And bringing that blue blood moon or something in.
Oh, it was
very
beautiful.
exciting too, right? It kind of changes the energy of things.
Did you catch it this morning? It was like 5 a.m. for me.
Oh dear, no.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was.
I bet. It
was about 15% bigger than usual on a full moon, and it was this gorgeous red. And I just sat there and stared at it for an hour.
Wow, you're like a little werewolf inside of you, or a vampire, or whatever. Whoever stares at the moon howls at the moon. Is it the wolves that howl at the moon?
Yes, they do, and I do too as well, I guess. But yeah, well, and sometimes you have to do silly stuff like that. And I know Amy Lyle is a silly, fun lady. She likes to laugh at her failures, and I do too. So I'm glad that we're going to have her on.
Yeah, she's taking laughing about failures to another level, that's for sure. She's a mom of 4 living in the suburbs, and she got rejected for representation from a Hollywood attorney. I don't have his name, though, for a screenplay, but she now has a best-selling book talking about failures, and we're going to hear a little bit about now. I think she's being offered the rights to her book or something as a movie, so that's exciting. She's turned her biggest failures into a best-selling memoir, and today she's going to talk about sharing her most mortifying moments and why we all should share ours as well. Amy, welcome back to What Women Want.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Hi, Kristen.
Hello, Amy. I am so glad to have you back. And the last time you were on the show, it was a comedy of errors. And let me just put it this way: you put the comedy into the comedy of errors last time. So I'm so thrilled to have you back. So thrilled, and I was solo that day. So I'm so glad that you and Judy are going to chat it up as well today. I think we're going to be rocking this LA Talk Radio this evening.
Totally,
it's going to be fun.
And Amy and I met on the set of Atlanta and Company down in Atlanta on 11 Alive down there. It's an NBC affiliate. And you were on there this morning, weren't you? Did I see that on Facebook?
I was on there this morning. It was so fun.
They are so great. I just want to give a shout out to Christine Pilara because she is amazing and so supportive. And I'm so glad that, because of them that I met you on the show. So let's hear your story. You are certainly winning your failures by writing and talking about all this. What first lit up that you would write a book about failures? What was a light bulb idea there?
Oh, sure. You touched on it a little bit. I have a female-centric bridesmaids meets bad moms comedy that I wrote under the mentorship of a guy that vetted films for Disney for 10 years. And when we were, he signed off. He's like, "You're done." He handed me over to a friend of his, an entertainment attorney. And so it was this warm handover. But even though it was a warm handover, the attorney said, "You're no one. You don't know anyone. You don't have any money. I'm not going to represent you." And I was so shocked. I said, "That makes me so sad." And he started giggling and he said, "You need to get on the map. You can't just waltz into Hollywood and sell a movie. You need to get on the map. You need to write a book or write a blog." And I said, what should I write a book about? And he said, "Write what you know." And he hung up, and it was great advice. It was true, and he was being helpful. And that same attorney is helping me make my film this summer, that, organizing as far as the paperwork and all that stuff. And he is representing me. You had mentioned, unbelievably, it's so funny. I wrote a screenplay and then couldn't get represented, so he told me to write a book, and then I write a book, and someone's inquired about turning the book into a script. It's so weird. So it's come full circle where he's representing me. But when he said write a book, it was the first thing that came to my mind was I have had an immense amount of failures, and I just thought it would be such a funny book, funny topic.
Well, it is certainly a funny topic, and the back cover is hysterical as well. You guys have to see this cover. She's walking away from you, so you can see her backside, and her dress is tucked into her panties as she's walking away in high heels. So it's just a book full of anecdotes and fun advice, and just making fun of yourself for pages and pages. Now, does that ever play on your insecurity?
Yes, of course. But it's, I really survived through that, and I'm drawn to stories of people that are survivors, and these stories are very woman-friendly, mom-friendly type stories. And so, there's nothing super hard hitting, and I've got some criticism of that. Like you don't have any real problems, but my argument to that is, it's okay to take a break from the world's problems for a few minutes, because those problems are still going to be there. And as a parent, the everyday of our lives, I've heard it. I love the way someone said the again of getting up and making breakfast and taking them to school and taking practice. The again of that can really sometimes be unfulfilling for women, and I think they feel guilty about that. And so the point of the book, my intention, is to make light and make fun of myself, failing in all these things, where really I'm just trying to survive. And the message is very much, let's say my life is a 7 when I start out in the book. My life is still a 7 at the end. Like there's no grand improvement. It's just about you get up again. And I really believe that if you share some of your failures, I'm not saying you share your deepest, darkest shame with someone initially, but to share a little bit of that you're vulnerable and everything's not perfect in your life, I think that opens up your friendships to a much richer level. And so that was the intention, just like you don't have to be perfect. This world looks so perfect and so Photoshopped and so filtered, but really you just had spinach in your teeth at that meeting, and it's funny, and why not laugh at yourself? So that's what I'm hoping people are getting out of it, and that's a lot of the positive feedback I'm getting is, you made me feel more normal. My life is like that too.
A lot of people, when I've read the reviews of the book, I haven't had the pleasure of reading it just yet. I'm dying to get a hold of it. But a lot of women are saying, because I hear it in your voice, you're just so relatable. And I know a lot of times in our lives, especially as women, we really have these intimate moments that can sort of traumatize us, or we can kind of roll it off and laugh at it. And one of the things I was reading is your gynecologist reported to you that your lady parts were too clean.
That was my best friend Sharon. Everybody, I don't know if you guys have a best friend like this, where they call you and you feel like...
No, I don't, actually.
Okay. Well, let me tell you about Sharon. So Sharon calls me, and it's always like I've missed the first 10 minutes of the conversation, and she's calling me, and I'm answering the phone, and she's in an elevator, and she says, "Amy, my vagina is too clean." And I'm like, what? And then meanwhile, she's talking to the person next to her, and the next thing you know, she's ordering a sandwich at Wendy's. And then in between all of that, she's like, "Yeah, you can't, put products up there. And don't take a bath. That's sitting in your own filth." And then she just goes away. She's like, "I got to go by." And so it was this whirlwind conversation, but the point of the conversation was that her OBGYN said that her vagina was in fact too clean.
Well, and I think what's so fascinating about this is, first of all, it's just, a lot of women, that word TOO, too, it's used against us. You're too this, you're too that, you're too bossy, you're too bitchy. Sorry to use the word, but too bitchy, too this, too that. And so many women, that is a weaponized word against women. And then you're in, I can just imagine your friend, they're in the stirrups, vulnerable, and then to have a doctor say, it's a little too clean. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, like she has on the back of her book, Kristen. Her photographer has a quote on the back of her book. Amy looks a lot older in person, but she made me Photoshop her.
Right.
I mean,
that's true. That is
Hollywood.
True. Even my ass is photoshopped, you guys. My ass doesn't look like that. No one's butt does.
Well,
they photoshopped my butt. It looks fabulous on the back of that cover.
Well, you know what? You're going to be so ready for Hollywood because you're going to be photoshopped and you'll just be acclimated once you get here and start making that movie and making deals. You're going to be acclimated because they Photoshop you no matter what, because you're, like I said, you're to this or you're to that. So I want to ask you, Amy, is there a failure that eclipses? We were talking about the eclipse and the blood moon and all of that a little bit earlier. Is there a failure that eclipses the rest of them for you? Is there a big one?
I mean, probably the most recent, which I'm going to share this with because you're in Hollywood, the most recent really funny big fail was when I went to the AFM last year, about this time last year, the American Film Market, and I didn't know what I was doing, and my attorney said, you're not allowed to sell your film. You're there to make friends and to say hello and see how the process works, but you're not selling anything, but I want you to practice your pitch. And so I didn't really know what I was doing, and so I would grab people and try to practice the pitch. They wanted no part of me. We do the cocktail party, in Santa Monica Pier or whatever, and then we get settled in our hotel, and everybody, all the industry people are coming in, and you've been there, so you can tell a writer is different looking than a producer. They look different. Like writers are in little boots and little skirts, and usually, and something fun, and producers are in business suits, Armani. They look, very businesslike. So my girlfriend and I were out there. We're having the cocktail, and these two well-dressed businessmen come in, and they say, "How'd you do today?" And I said, "Great." And they said, "What's happening?" And I just launched into my most phenomenal pitch of the day about this film. About this
and they were extras on a movie.
They were lamp salesmen.
What? Amy, oh my God, I know why. Amy, I know why. That hotel that you went to is like right down the street.
On the marina?
Yeah, that hotel is right down the street from a famous lamp shop. Oh my God, Amy. Like, seriously,
yes,
no, there's like...
They were lamp salesmen from Iowa. They didn't even live in L.A. They were from Iowa. I'm not making this up. And they were there for a design event, and they loved my pitch, you guys. They thought that was the best pitch all day. And I think they might even invest with me. But anyway, so my girlfriend, like, the cocktail came out of her nose. I mean, they said we're lamp salesmen. And it was so funny and it just really highlighted the whole expensive weekend of basically nothing happening, but it was still fun, and it's worth it because I could share that story with you, and I also put it in my book. But yeah, I pitched the best pitch of my life
to lamp salesman. Well,
yeah.
That's Hollywood in a nutshell, Amy. The most expensive weekend of my life where basically nothing happened. I mean,
you never know. Maybe his sister-in-law worked in the business. You don't know.
No, maybe you were just meant to get it out, to someone who, didn't have a role in that industry yet and just kind of practice. And then I bet you the second and third time you were a lot looser and a lot more confident. No?
Exactly.
You figured if I could say it to a lamp
Absolutely.
salesman, I could say it to anyone.
You're like, that guy loved this pitch. Yes, exactly.
The art of failing upward. So I read a New York Times article from about a year ago about the .com companies and how they take failures and they talk about them in front of larger audiences, which, your lamp salesmen were times 2, so you're getting there. And the growth they experience, it sounds like you are doing the same thing, is really taking it and growing with it. And I was fascinated, and not in this article, but somewhere else I read that there's even a school. Now, this is so in tandem with your book, in Silicon Valley, where failure is part of the curriculum. It's a private school. It's about $27,000 a year for tuition for a kindergartner, and failure is part of the curriculum. What do you think about that?
I think that's important, and it's so funny because failure is such a hot topic right now, which is fun.
Yeah, you should go speak at that school.
I should. And my husband is an engineer, and so failure is think of Einstein, where he's like, trying to create something. He said, okay, well, now I know that doesn't work. It wasn't a failure. It was, I'm going to try this to point this. Okay, cross that off. Doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to do the next one. Okay, that doesn't work. It's so funny. The Americans, and we have 4 children. They are very, very concerned about failure. They are so concerned about failure, it's causing them to take pause in taking a harder course or trying something new. And so, I really try to instill that on my children. Like, no, life is about risk. Life is about figuring out what you can't do well, or life is figuring out how can I do it better. And so it's so weird that people have I was reading, people have a fear of a failure and being humiliated. It's it's below dead bodies, the fear of dead bodies, above spiders. They're very scared of having a failure.
People go crazy over spiders too. I mean, there are, if you look on like Facebook and YouTube, I mean, there is just like people losing it over spiders, but fear of failure overdoes that. My gosh. Like,
or embarrassing, or an embarrassing moment, or think what you see in social media where I think there's a real loneliness. People are lonely, and even though they have social media.
Is that why you wrote the book, so no one could make fun of you for anything that you haven't just put out there already? That's brilliant.
That's smart.
And even if the book happened to fail, it didn't. It's a success. But if it did fail, I'm like, what do you expect? Like the first draft, Judy, I had 2 grammatic errors, and the proofreader missed them, and the content editor missed them. I mean, it's 40,000 words, and they missed them. And somebody, I immediately fixed it. Yes, I immediately fixed it. But it was so funny that someone commented on it. I'm like, this is called the Book of Failures, and you're going to tell me that I'm not using the comma in the right place? Like, of course I'm not. It's a book of failures.
Right.
But now the comma's in the right place. It's been fixed.
Well, the comma's in the right place, and it's hitting the right place in people's hearts and in people's minds. And the more I hear about this, I actually think Larry David would be all over this. This would totally be up his alley.
He'll probably steal it from us.
Right. Well, Larry David, if you're listening, if you steal this book from Amy, we are coming after you. And you don't want the What Women Want girls going after you. But here's the thing, Amy. I know I've done improv. I've done a little bit of sketch. I do horror comedy. You and I were talking about this before. You, of course, are a braver soul than me. You've done stand-up. I haven't done stand-up yet, but I'm inching my way there closer each day. Do you feel pressure to be funny? I know some comedians really feel pressure, and it becomes like this intense obsession with them. Do you feel pressure to be funny, or are you just funny?
It depends on the situation. For example, I'm a little actor, and we've talked about this before, where you're a real actor. I'm an actor at church in front of 300 second graders every week, every Sunday, and I'm very recognized in the grocery store, just so you know. But when I first got that position, the gentleman that hired me, the director per se, introduced me to the entire team, this giant team, and he said, this is Amy Lyle. She's very funny.
Oh.
And then I just was standing there. And so then I didn't know what to say, so I just said, that's right. I am really funny. Like, there's what am I going to do? A joke right then? So it was, hopefully they all laughed. It turned it into a funny moment, but you can't, it's hard to, I don't know. I think if you try to be funny, it's a lot harder. Stand-up is a unique thing. You have to do it. It's like getting a shot of adrenaline into your soul. And you know what's so beautiful about stand-up is you know if you're winning and you're connecting with that audience immediately. And if you start to fail and flounder, you can recover. You put your new material in between two jokes that are solid. And it is a magical type thing. And this book kind of reads, kind of a little bit, that's why it's so little short essays. It kind of reads like, it's got a rhythm to it because, Kristen, you and I, Judy too, probably are good cocktail party guests. We know how to tell a story.
Right.
And there's a timing to it, and there's a timing to stand-up comedy. So, yes, I guess sometimes I feel pressured to be funny, but I don't know. My family doesn't think I'm that funny. My children don't think I'm funny at all.
Well, you know what? Second graders are a tough crowd. I mean, you really...
No, my second graders love me.
I think
they think I'm really funny.
Win the second grade church crowd, win the nation. That's what I say. If you can get them,
Exactly.
that's. I mean, no, kids are tough.
Yeah, Amy, what are your teenage kids? My teenage kids are getting to the point where they don't even want to know me anymore. I mean, I posted an Instagram video today about the show tonight, and my daughter was like, Mom, you posted on Instagram again? And I'm like, yes. Listen to me.
Yes, they monitor that, right?
Yeah, totally. So, what do they say about this book? What do they think about it? What's their feeling about it? I can just imagine.
Well, this is so embarrassing. I think we have 3 daughters. Only one daughter has read it. She loved it. And then our son, he hasn't read it, but he read his chapter. There's a chapter in there, and it's a very embarrassing chapter for him. And he's turned out to be a nice kid, but he had some really, he was an arsonist there for a while, and one time we told him not to leave the car for any circumstances. Do not. You're in trouble. And he took a grocery bag and pooped in the grocery bag in the car just to spite us. And, you told me not to leave this car. And, he was like 11. And, I put that in the book. I put that in there. And, now he's an Eagle Scout, and he's, very smart and probably going to Georgia Tech. But he vacillates between being extremely embarrassed, but yet like, my chapter is this chapter. Look, did you see that I'm in this book? I have my own chapter, and it's called like The Only Son or something. So he's embarrassed, but he was, now he's 16. At the time he was 10 or whatever when he did that. So he goes back and forth between absolute mortification, but yet he's proud he's in there and has his own chapter.
Well, then you're doing a great job of parenting, then, because that's what a parent has to do. You have to mortify your children just enough, and then uplift them just enough. That's beautiful. What do you think of that, Judy?
Yeah, she even has a chapter in here called "We're Outnumbered." We have 4 teenagers in our house ranging from age 13 to 18. Children ask an inexhaustible number of questions. Can I sleep over at Jill's Friday? Can Gabby, Katie, Alexis, and Emma sleep over on Saturday? Why can't I get a new phone, sneakers, dress, video game, rug for my room? Did you drink alcohol in high school? And then the last bullet, she has a whole list of all the questions they ask all the time. When can I have my phone back? When can I have my phone back? When can I have my phone back? I can't honestly even conceive the challenges and the upheaval, Kristen, you were talking about earlier, in that house with 4 teenagers. It must be just wild.
It is crazy, and I can use leverage. I'm writing a new book. I'd love for people in the audience to send me funny failures, because, my book is funny with my own failures, but every single person has a awesome, really funny laugh out loud fail.
Yeah, you could be chicken soup for the failures.
Yes, right. That's what I want to do. And I will give them credit. I'll massage it. But if they're a blogger or they're an actor or whatever, I want to give them credit for that story and do a collection. So I'm so excited about that. But this book, my daughter, the middle one, she's 18. I forget, we got into something in the kitchen, and I just happened to have aluminum foil in my hand, and I said, if you say that one more time, I'm going to strike you with this aluminum foil. And then she got right in my face, and so I kind of whacked her, not in a abusive type way at all, just like a tap, like, stop it. And she immediately panicked, and she didn't panic because I struck her with the aluminum foil. She panicked. She goes, "Please don't put that in your book that you just whacked me with the aluminum foil."
Oh, gosh. Wow. Please don't put that in your book.
It works. It's like, "Don't you dare do that. I'm going to put you in my book." And then, and then they say, "Well, we're going to write a book." I said, "Great, write your own book. You can put all
Or talk
all
about
these
you on
anecdotes."
TV in Atlanta and Company.
Exactly.
So that I'm so excited. So you're working on collecting more stories of failures. You want other people to contribute their failures. Is that your next big failure, Amy?
That is my next book. It's The Failure of My Friends, and I am so excited. I'm so excited. And if you ask people for failures, they sometimes can't think of them right away. But if you're specific, like I asked a girlfriend for an airplane failure, and she said, "Okay, I've got a great airplane fail." I go to the airplane. I'm very nervous. I go to the crown room. I have to get a drink. I do not like to fly, so I go and have the drink. And I get on the airplane. There's a delay. I have another drink. And she's like, I get so relaxed. We start pulling away from the tarmac. And she's like, "Oh, thank goodness." And she just takes a nap. And she wakes up, and like the gentleman, his arm is kind of across her nose, like adjusting the window blind. And she rustles up and she gets her phone and she's like, "Oh my gosh, we're here. And he looks at her and he's like, "We haven't even left the tarmac, lady." They hadn't. She just took like a little disco nap there for a second. So stuff like that. I just think that's so true life. It's so funny to me, stuff like that.
Why do you think it's so cathartic, people reading about your failures or even talking about their own?
Okay, something really, really powerful that's not funny and not a failure at all. But this really touches my heart. When 12 million women said "Me Too," when 12 million women said "Me Too," and they were tweeting and posting about, "I have been carrying this weight on my shoulders for 20 years," and they found strength in knowing that somebody had experienced the same thing, that could be something very profound, like it being exploited in that way. And I think it is, obviously not on the same level, but to have somebody say, "That happened to me too. I did that too," even if it's a lighter thing. When I was going through a divorce, I was so raw. And I remember I told the lady behind me in the grocery store, I was actually asking her for advice. That's how raw I was. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And she listened, and then she said, "My husband is a cross-dresser, and I found out he has a stage name of Candy Apples. What am I supposed to do with that?" And it was like so funny. And she knew she had permission to one-up me. You know what I mean? She had already showed empathy. She had already said, "I know how you feel." And it was appropriate that she threw out this funny story at me. And we started laughing. I never saw her again. But in that one moment, it made me feel better that she had been rejected by someone too. And I don't know. That's how I feel about it. I feel like you are releasing that burden, and you can't do it to everyone, and everybody hasn't earned the right to hear your deepest, darkest secrets. But I think on an everyday level, if we do it a little bit more, I think I don't know. For me, it's cathartic, and it just gives you a glimpse into someone else's life, and that they're going through kind of the same thing.
That's so beautiful. I think that's so tremendously beautiful and poignant and funny and just interesting, because sometimes you get in this thought process as a woman where you see images of women on film and TV and I think Leave It to Beaver and some of those older shows give us this idea of the perfect mom, the perfect woman, the perfect wife. And it's a very high bar. And
yes,
right, it's such a high bar, and it doesn't. And these women don't fail. They always have the lunch packed on time. They always have dinner cooked, and you feel like, oh man, and they do it so effortlessly.
It looks right. Looks that way. Sure,
it seems that way. And then when you actually talk to a woman, she's putting the fun and dysfunctional too. And what a blessing, that the woman that you talked to was so frank and candid and good natured about sharing something that could be deeply traumatizing. I mean,
oh sure,
Candy Apples. Well, I hope Candy Apples is doing well, and But that's a woman who's made peace with the fact that not everything's going to be perfect, and that sounds what you've also done. Is I think, Judy, women have an obsession sometimes with perfection, for better or worse, and to be let free of that, to be freed from that, is a beautiful thing too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that is a common theme for women. I know Siri tonight was beating herself up about, not, canceling at the last minute, and she had the flu, and I felt so bad for her, but I was like, Siri, I think you're awesome, and we're going to reschedule you, and don't worry about it. I mean, yeah, you're right. It's not a perfect life, and we can't expect things to be perfect. And when we do, that's really when it comes crashing down inside ourselves. So we always talk about it comes from within, right? I really think that whole mentality eventually will implode.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll implode.
And I love Nora Ephron, the writer, When Harry Met Sally, and, the famous writer. And she grew up in... She tells this great story about seventh grade, and her heart got broken, and her parents were listening, but then she noticed they were taking notes. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And they just said, "I know this hurts now, but it won't later, and everything is copy." She grew up knowing if she had a funny tale to tell, it was going to end up, her parents were both writers as well. And it's so true. The woman that told me about candy apples, can you imagine the betrayal? Can you imagine? But, time had passed. And that's not her soulmate, someone who is interested in that. That's not her person. And so enough time had passed that she used that humiliating moment and that painful moment to make another human feel good. And so I just think that's what life is all about. If you can use your pain or use your embarrassment to make somebody else feel better, then that's what makes the world go around, I believe.
No, it's so true. And failure really gets internalized from when think about it. Toddlers, you break something, you get yelled at. You do something wrong, you get punished. And
right.
We grow up with this deep, belief that doing something wrong, failing, losing. I know that when my kids were going through elementary school, some of the teachers or coaches would say, it's not all about winning or losing. It's how you play the game. I am not like that. I'm
a scorekeeper. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you need to play to win. You don't play to just, we just internalize it at such a young age, and it's hard to break that mold. And that's one of the things I admire most about you writing that book, is that you really did step out on a really big ledge. I mean, you took a huge leap there. That's really admirable. I mean, we naturally deal with failure by ignoring it, right? I think.
Minimizing
I think that's what most people do.
Yes or not disclosing it, or twisting it, or
putting it aside. Yeah.
Yes, putting it aside. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just ignoring it, and we really don't get in deep and talk about it. And I think that's like the New York Times article, The Art of Failing Upward. I wanted to name this show that so bad when I read that. But I was like, you can't plagiarize New York Times. But she just really caught it right in that title, The Art of Failing Upward. It's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, some people sometimes say, failing forward. What do what are you learning from it? I mean, some stuff you can't learn anything. It's just you were at the wrong place at the wrong time, or, the relationship wasn't right or whatever. But most things you can take something from it. And that's, I think, the important thing versus, you would just never leave your house. I mean, if you really internalized all that, which some people do, they don't leave their house. They are so fearful of what other people think of them, or other people's perception of them, or their perception of other people, because they're seeing social media or whatever, and they're feeling more and more and more isolated because my life doesn't match up to that person's life. But really, everybody's life is not as shiny as it seems.
No.
Yeah, Kristen, what are some of your biggest failures? I want to know. I've been divorced, went through bankruptcy, had like 10 surgeries, or I don't know if that's failing, but that's health issues. What are some of your failures? Come on.
Oh, I had a really hard time when I was in Shakespeare and Repertory. They gave me this part, In Richard II, it's a tragedy. Richard II is what's called the proto-Hamlet. It was like the practice Hamlet for Shakespeare. And I was playing the Duchess of York, and it's one of those strange scenes in the Shakespearean lexicon that is the comedy act before the king dies. And I mean, the first 4 weeks of rehearsals, I could not find the comedy in the scene to save my life. Every single day, I was failing flat on my face. I just could not find it. I finally got there once I stopped caring.
Let it go.
And I had that pressure, even back at that time, I had won a few awards at acting. I had acted professionally. I had been to class. I had been in professional environments, so I had this big impetus to nail this, get it right, get it pinned down.
You were looking for perfection.
I was looking for perfection, and this character at this part of this play was so unhinged. I had to really just open up to failing like she was, because she was actually failing, and I didn't realize that until years later. That perfection that I was trying to save face as an actor was not helping me deal with this particular character. Sometimes I do strange voices, for horror characters or animated characters, and they just, they don't sound right on the tape. And then, I'll be in a room trying to do a ghost and talk like this. And it doesn't quite work. It doesn't come from the most truthful place, and then I have to work on it. So, and it's my voice. It's something personal. It's my throat chakra. It's how I communicate to the world. So sometimes, I fail at that. I don't find the character voice the way I want it to, especially when I'm playing more fantastical characters. And then, I have to tell you, I am not as musically inclined as I would want to be. My mother is a stellar musician, operatic voice. I do sing. I can carry a tune. I've sung in one movie, the end credits of one movie. But I don't have the singing. I was told in acting school, musical theater is not going to be in your career path. I mean, literally told that to my face. My instructor said, "This is not going to be for you. Stick with Shakespeare, please." And I here's the thing: is when people criticize you like that, you either take it or you leave it, or sometimes you do have to reframe it. And okay, well, 5 years later, I am singing at the end credits of a movie. It's just not, a musical. It's just a little different. It was a sort of a more moody song. So, I have things that I am not great at. But sometimes I found that I can repurpose those things that I'm not great at for comedic effect. And I think you've tapped into that as well, Amy.
And that's the whole idea of failing upward, right?
Yeah. Upward, onward, forward, backward.
Yeah, what did Will Smith say? He said, fail early, fail hard, and fail forward, or whatever he said. Fail fast, fail early, and
fail
and
often,
do it forward.
too. Yeah, you got to fail often. You have to be willing to know, if I think of Edison and the great inventors. They tried all these inventions, like you were talking about the Museum of Failure, that just didn't work.
Right. Cross that off. We're that much closer to what does work.
Right.
Well, no, that is the museum. Yeah, the Museum of Failure itself is working, though. They want to go worldwide with this. LA was their first venue besides Sweden, after they opened up in Sweden. So it's going to catch on.
That'd be so fun. The criticism, Kristen, you were talking about, people can internalize that too. And, if you put yourself out there creatively in any capacity, you are not going to please everyone, and you're going to catch somebody on a bad day, and they're going to unleash on you.
That's right. Amy, I'm sorry. We have about a minute left, and I want to get in your website real quick and where your book is sold and all that.
Oh, sure. It's sold on Amazon, and it's in an ebook, a regular paperback book, and also available on Audibles. And my website, if somebody would love to send me a fail, I'd love to hear it, is www.amylyle.me.
We so enjoyed having you on the show. We lost track of time because it was so interesting and fascinating what you're talking about. Thank you so much for taking the time. And Bill Carmody is back next week with us, a writer from Inc. magazine and a motivational speaker. If your life were a movie, would anyone pay to see it? Now that's relevant in this around here with all of these surrounded by actors and movie producers and directors. And Daniela Cracknell, she's coming on the air next week. She's a superstar publicist who founded thebreakupexperts.com. That's fodder for interesting conversation also. And remember, subscribe to us on YouTube. Don't miss even one show. Go to whatwomenwantradio.com for more, and see you next week. Thank you for listening. Good night.
You're listening to What Women Want with Judy Goss and Kristen West, only on LA Talk Radio.